कहानी वही पुरानी सुना दो.
Over 3,000 years ago, one of the warring nomadic tribes of what we now call the Indo-European peoples moved from their homelands south of the Ural Mountains. They were the Aryans, and they headed south into India. In the 15th century BC, they arrived at the river Indus, the area now called Pakistan. The Aryans conquered northern India, and they brought with them their own gods and formed a society based on the caste system. Thus, Brahmanism was born, which later developed into Hinduism. The caste system was partly based on occupation, partly on skin colour. The indigenous Indian population was the darkest, so they were confined to the bottom of the hierarchy. Due to the caste system, each occupation had its own labourers and experts. These salt miners have handled salt from one generation to the next, as long as anyone can remember. Buddhism, which was also born there, spread from northern India to other parts of Asia. The only thing that is left of Buddhism today in this area are monastery ruins. Alexander the Great also invaded the Indus area and left its mark on the features of the local Buddha, different from Buddhas in other parts of Asia. In the Taxila excavations, the archaeologists found a cross, and the same kind of cross is worn by many Pakistani bishops today. This cross supports their claim that the Apostle Thomas brought Christianity to India. In the 8th century, General Muhammad bin Qasim, only a teenager from Arabia, brought Islam to India. But Islam didn't really spread until King Babu's invasion of Punjab in the 16th century. King Babu's forefathers were the great Huns, Timur Lenk and Genghis Khan. Almost simultaneously with Babu's invasion of Punjab, the Portuguese landed in Goa, south of Bombay. The English, too, in the shape of the East India Company, gained influence in India. The Islamic Mughal kings were tolerant, as the vast majority of the Indian peoples were Hindus. Akbar, the greatest of the Mughals, built a hall of religions where learned Muslims, Hindus and Catholic priests could engage in dialogue. Clive's victory over the Mughals at the Battle of Plassey in 1757 put an end to the Mughal Empire, and the East India Company moved from victory to victory. The Muslims felt that Allah had forsaken them, because they had allowed the Hindus to defile Islam. The success of the British brought more and more Europeans to India: administrators, soldiers, businessmen, clergy and missionaries, wives, fiancés and children. In 1857, many Indian soldiers rebelled against the British in the Indian Mutiny, but it was crushed with the same cruelty meted out by the mutineers themselves. The government of Queen Victoria replaced the influence of the East India Company. Sir Syed Ahmed Khan realized that the West must be fought by other Western methods also. Talented young boys were sent to British schools. The poet and philosopher Muhammad Iqbal had studied in Europe, and in 1927 he claimed that the Hindus and Muslims were two different nations. Islam replaced the concept of nationality. Cultural differences were emphasized by pointing out that Hindus worship cows while Muslims eat them. In 1947, when the British granted independence to India, the country was divided and Pakistan was formed as a home for the Muslims. More than 10 million people left their homes. The Hindus moved to India, Muslims to the new nation, Pakistan.
My father and mother, they went to bed on 13 August 1947. And when they went to bed, they knew they were in India. They got up in the morning, that was 14 August 1947, and they discovered now they're in Pakistan.
In the 1930s, the author Mulkraj Anand described an Indian sweeper. He was a true child of the outcast colony where there are no drains, no light, no water, of the marshland where people live among the latrines of the townsmen. He had wallowed in its mire, bathed in its marshes, played among its rubbish heaps. Malaria lingered in his bones, and that disease does not kill, but merely dissipates energy. Some instinct told him that as a sweeper he should show himself in people's presence as little as possible. For a sweeper, a menial, to be seen smoking constituted an offence before the Lord. The caste system was an attempt to create social inequality between people on a permanent basis. The king was the highest legal authority and the Brahmin was his counselor. People were born into a certain caste and occupation and were to stay in it as long as they lived. Castes were separated from each other by their degree of ritual purity or the lack of it. The Brahmins always occupied the top of the hierarchy, the untouchables the bottom. The untouchables were unclean to enable others to be clean. The repressed classes of India totally lacked political and economic power. They saw no salvation either inside the caste system or outside it. In the latter half of the 19th century, untouchables made up about 12% of the Indian population. But under British colonial rule, the caste system had gradually lost some of its influence. Christianity and Islam offered the untouchables freedom as well as protection, but above all, a new identity.
My experience, and having looked at that history very carefully, is that the Christian experience has a genuine exodus experience. They were Hindu from the lower Shudra and untouchable classes. They became Christian and escaped the slavery in Egypt of that kind of Hinduism to become Christians. But the problem is that the church has not helped them come out of that slavery as yet. So they're sort of caught up in the desert.
Some missionaries claimed that the caste system had nothing to do with religion. Others compared it with the class society in Europe. Eventually, most missionaries realized that political freedom was part of the Christian message. The caste system had created the concept of untouchables, but they were not even regarded as Hindus until the 1930s. And then, when India was about to gain her independence, the untouchables were needed as voters.